Hello again, everyone. I'm here today and I'm very excited to discuss the results of our little experiment from last week. If you didn't see it, I made a video. I think I titled it Let's Talk Together, Jane Austen's Novels and Adaptations. And the idea was basically that I kind of put the question out there, what are your favorites? And then I would collect all of the responses and kind of put them together and discuss it a little bit more thoroughly with your comments this week. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who watched the video or commented or gave me feedback. I really appreciate it. This is just something I thought of last week that I sort of had in my mind for a while, and I thought now is the time to do it. So I really appreciate you guys kind of working with me to try this out. I think you guys are actually going to be really surprised by the results because I saw a lot of comments about things that people were voting for that I thought maybe weren't such popular opinions, but what I found is that you're wrong, and they are. I think we can all say that we expected Pride and Prejudice to be first, and it was. No surprises there, but it actually tied with Persuasion for favorite novel. In number 3, we have Northanger Abbey. Also not a surprise. I think Northanger Abbey is just a really fun novel, and a lot of people catch on to that. But we'll talk more about that later. And then tied at number 4 was Sense and Sensibility and Emma. There was also one vote each for Jane Austen's Letters, Mansfield Park, and Lady Susan. A lot of great comments about Pride and Prejudice that I really appreciated. One in particular that I want to share with you is from Jessica Elizabeth Delaney, and she said, "Pride and Prejudice is my security blanket. Anytime I need to step away from everything, I reread it." I kind of feel that way too, but actually about Persuasion, and it's just kind of a nice feeling to have a book that's kind of like home. And talking about favorites, we all have our favorites for different reasons. I think a lot of us love Pride and Prejudice because we love Lizzie, or, we love the story, or we love Darcy, but there's also that kind of feeling of a book being, the one book you always come back to. So I really appreciated that comment. A Skirmish of Wit, nice name by the way, says, "Although I haven't read all her novels, my favorite is probably Persuasion. I'm a little shocked at myself that it's not Pride and Prejudice, but I think Persuasion has a real maturity to it with some wonderfully complex characters, which personally meant I was a lot more emotionally invested in its heroine than some of the other lighter novels." I thought this was an interesting comment because I saw a couple of other people say that Persuasion is a little bit more of a mature book. To me, I took that as, it was one of the last books that she wrote, I think. And it definitely has some more mature themes in terms of, you sort of have to be a little bit older to appreciate Anne's struggle in rejecting Wentworth and then seeing him years later and someone else, I think it was Ed Spook, also said that the characters in Persuasion were so great, and that's kind of what made the book great for him. And I do think that Anne Elliot in particular is such a sympathetic character, while her family is just so horrible. You can even forgive Captain Wentworth for being kind of an asshole. As I said, Persuasion is my favorite, and I really love it because of Anne Elliot in particular, but also just her story and everything that she went through. Good job, Anne Elliot. From The Rants of a Bookworm, my favorite, and that's such a tough question as it changes frequently, is Northanger Abbey for its humor and discussion of reading. There's a huge chunk in Northanger Abbey that talks about reading novels and how it's awesome and everyone should do it. And it is wonderful, and consequently, it is where I got the name of my channel, which I'm actually thinking of changing, but still, the origin of this channel comes from that book. The adaptation conversation was also very interesting, and I'm completely unsurprised that Pride and Prejudice, the 1995 Jennifer L. and Colin Firth version, won, but only won by one vote. It was like 9 people who voted for Jennifer L. and 8 people who voted for Keira Knightley. The other favorite adaptations were the 2007 version of Northanger Abbey with Felicity Jones, the 1995 Sense and Sensibility, which is, of course, a classic and has Colonel Brandon in it. 1995 Persuasion, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. I'll talk more about that in a second. All with like one vote, we have Mansfield Park, Emma, The Lizzie Bennet Diaries, Sense and Sensibility 2008, Emma 2009, and Pride and Prejudice from 1940. One vote for that one. In the comments, we have a couple of really great things that people said, so I'd like to read them to you now. Midwinter Nightingale, who is very sweet and has a great channel, says, "For me, this series is perfect. Every frame, every note of music, every character is my version of that character, and it's my enduring comfort watch, something I could start at any point of the episode and be instantly immersed." I think a lot of people feel that way about Pride and Prejudice. Personally, even though that was the first Pride and Prejudice I saw, I didn't get as into it as I got into the later Pride and Prejudice. One of my favorite comments comes from Betty Turner, who said, "Though I love the 2007 adaptation with J.J. Fields and Felicity Jones of Northanger Abbey," yes, "my fave movie, possibly of all time, is the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. I find it funny that so many people have knee-jerk reactions to it because it had a grittiness to it. Like life in that time was supposed to be all muslin and crinoline. Life would have been clean and dandy for the super rich, but the actual running of the house would have been a miserable, horrible existence for the staff." This was the very first thing about the 2005 Pride and Prejudice that really got me, because I remember when they first walk into the dance hall and they're all dancing and having fun. It's crowded and people are sweaty and their cheeks are pink. Outside it's muddy and dirty, and like there are a bunch of dudes waiting around to take people home, and it's just way more authentic than the shinier other versions of all of these adaptations, or any adaptations that don't really show the truth of what things might have been like. Of course, the rich people would have had a very clean life, or a cleaner life, but that just wouldn't have been true for people who were maybe a little bit lower. A Skirmish of Wit again says, "When it comes to the films, as much as Colin Firth is the epitomic Darcy, I do love Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice from 2005. It's a very beautiful film to look at, and I personally think that this film in particular did a great job of showing the family dynamic in the Bennet household, which makes me forgive some of the film's faults. Likewise, Bingley and Jane in this version are just the cutest things ever." I so agree with that. And they're so adorable that it's like, it radiates throughout the film. It's amazing. I also agree, because you don't always get both sides of what a household of that time looked at, you know. In more Victorian and Edwardian era shows and movies, you see the upstairs downstairs thing, but in Pride and Prejudice, you know, sort of for the first time in a Jane Austen adaptation, you're seeing the, you know, the front of the house, the back of the house, you know, you're seeing the servants going through and doing their work, and there's laundry, and it's a real house, and they have, you know, chickens and stuff like that, and it's a house, you know, it just seems more real. So another thing, you know, in general, just another vote for Joe Wright's 2005 Pride and Prejudice. And finally, a comment, another one from Ed Spook, who says, "The Kieran Hines version of Persuasion is probably also my favorite adaptation. It's a work of art independently from being an adaptation, but it also captures the atmosphere of the book so well." As I was saying when I got started, I highly recommend this version of Persuasion, and this is why. Because if you know about Persuasion, there's a scene in the book where Captain Wentworth is writing a letter to Anne, and it's like his declaration of love and his apology for being a total jerk, and it's just a really intense scene. And if you watch the later Persuasion, he writes it somewhere else, and then she like runs to him, and it's all very like implausible in terms of, you know, Regency era like etiquette. Interestingly enough, the other version of Persuasion, it actually follows the book, where they're both in the same room and he's writing the letter while she's there, and it's like she's noticing that he's writing a letter, and he's trying to be really discreet so that other people don't see, or that someone doesn't take the note. He has to leave it with her very like secretly, and then she reads it and she has to go after him. I just think that scene in particular was just so beautiful and really captured, you know, all of the constrictions of that kind of life. I highly recommend that. I think that my favorite is probably the latest Persuasion. That one, or I really love the new BBC, it's not new anymore, it's like 7 years old, shut up. The like 2007 Sense and Sensibility, I can't explain it. I know that Colonel Brandon is a favorite, and Alan Rickman as Colonel Brandon is incredible, but I still think that the more recent version is just prettier, and It's another more authentic look, and I just like everything about it and everyone who's acting in it, and it gives me all the feels. I think I've done good. This is going to be so long. Let's talk more in the comments. Do you have responses to any of the things that were said, or any things that I said, or any other thoughts about the books or movies? I'm still working this out, so please continue to give your feedback. Tell me if you think this is interesting. If you have any topic ideas, I'm going to do this again starting after Christmas, like after the new year. So I think it'll be fun, and I want to be more inclusive. I felt like people were a bit left out because Jane Austen is kind of specific. So hopefully new topics will either be varied over time or be more general questions. I will put a bunch of links below, including the spreadsheet that I made. It's been fun. I feel good about this, I think. I'm excited. I'm excited to explore it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.